Good morning,
Hey, good morning.
John's note taker
That's
and
not me.
Steve and Roman. I know it's not you, Steve. You
I,
know,
I was gonna ask you why you're using John's note taker.
all communications are going to get intermediated by bots. Like your bot, travel bot will fight the airlines bot. They want to raise prices. Your bot wants to lower prices. Uh, and now, instead of John, we have John's note taker attending our meeting. Sign of things to come. Maybe soon there'll be my
Yeah.
avatar
Yeah,
running this
everybody talks
meeting.
about I have a bot that's going to buy my plane tickets for me, and I actually have strong opinions on my plane flights. I don't need a bot to do it for me. But what I would like a bot to do is when I need to get credits from the airline because they canceled a flight or something,
Oh,
rather
to
than
talk
sit
to them.
online for 3 hours, I'd rather have the
That's right.
bot do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Negotiate discounts, haggle with.
That's right.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, last time I got stuck in an airport, I just pulled out my credit card, went to a hotel, and then I called the customer success line to figure out what my credits would be.
it's such an Orwellian term, customer success line.
Yeah,
It's
and
great.
after a couple of hours, I finally got through, and they told me I had to go back to the airport and wait in the line there to take advantage of anything. It's like, yeah, that's just not happening.
All right. So first order of business, now that we're done with our pleasantries. Is I'm putting the meeting notes link in the chat. If you have trouble accessing it, request access. I will monitor my Gmail and should be able to grant you access promptly. And yeah, so uh, the first thing I want to go through real quick today, we got a new SIG that will take over from this SIG, the pesky business of dealing with regulators. I couldn't be happier that this is happening. Well, in part because this is not my expertise. It's the other my all attempts on our behalf to reach out to NIST and whatever they've been mostly thwarted. I think we had some limited success with ICO. But this means that our charter needs an update. And our charter is not a markup file, it's a Google Doc that later gets exported as PDF, which we then upload to the GitHub for the consortium. So what I want to go through really quick, and I really don't want it to take up too much time, is I want to go through our charter document, which I'm sharing here again. I'm going to place the link in the chat. Please open that. And yeah. What I want to do with that is I proposed a few changes. Well, first off,
I need to reread it again fast.
I don't know why there is. Yeah, it's just I took out a bunch of stuff related to regulators from this doc. I do not understand why there is a space here in the beginning. It wouldn't let me. All right. So a lot of the text remains, and this is we're basically saying, look, context computing needs to be governable. It explains uh, it's you know perhaps not relevant to us since we're not going to be dealing with regulators. We're just basically saying there are multiple types of regulators, and the payload is basically all regulators demand that the subjects of regulations achieve, maintain, and prove on-demand compliance with a given set of requirements. Right. So we don't talk about what these requirements are in this SIG, but we can basically say it's a, take this seriously. This is like, as I like to say, when regulators want something, it's not a suggestion. Uh, that's, you do this or else. And the fact that regulation or governance is still the seven-step process. By the way, very few people actually define what they mean by governance, and I felt it was important. So that's in here. That remains unchanged. This diagram about, how evidence is presented to regulators and regulators give us regulations and how this loop works. And I'm suggesting mode. Okay. So the changes really begin. And by the way, feel free to review and propose changes now that we have
Yeah, I
special
was actually reading
regulatory.
through the whole thing, and uh, as I was reading the top of it, I'm thinking, oh my, we're going to have to make some bigger changes to this. But then I get to the changes you made at the end, and you kind of skillfully um, uh, realigned it from regulators to regulated organizations.
Yes.
And I think that's probably about as small as you can make the change and have it
Yeah.
be accurate.
So this was also changed. I do not know why it doesn't show as changed. Um, but um, I did change the constituents to basically say, look, we got CSPs, we got uh,
Developers.
developers, um, right? And we have customers, maybe products, services, I should say that. And then we have customers and services, okay. And then we're basically saying notably absent from this list is the regulators and auditors. And then
Yep.
basically referring to the SIG. Okay. And then we still have the two goals. Like I first thought maybe the first can be just removed, the support for the creation of effective regulatory frameworks. So the key thing here, we're not doing the creation of the frameworks. We're doing the support for the creation of the frameworks, right? We're providing, um, uh, we're going to
You,
engage with them and give them these feedbacks or
you can even
these
drop
inputs.
the creation, right? So support for effective regulatory frameworks.
Uh, well, I mean, they don't exist yet. Um, um,
Right, but what we could swap the order of one and two because our primary focus then becomes recommendations for repeated patterns and tooling. Right, that's where we're going to spend most of our time. And
okay. So let's do that. Let me take this out. So, doing that. Like I, I think it's having trouble. So, okay, let me undo this real quick. And let's agree on the text, and then I'll swap out the. Okay, let's just yeah, we agree. Yes. Um,
yep,
we will. Any changes? So here there are no changes yet. Um, okay, let's just clean things up a bit. So we're basically saying while not engaging with regulators directly, I think that's
yep,
an important one. The GRC SIG will partner with the regulatory standard SIG. So we can basically say two. Oh, why it's not showing this? Can I accept deletion? I don't even know how, like why. Okay. Ah, okay. All right. So let look through these bullets here and let's like accept or make additional changes.
yeah, I'm okay with the changes you made.
All right. Again, anyone else on the call? Um, any suggestions, please? I'll speak up. Okay. Oh,
We lose little Roman.
okay. All right. So then we will now take this and put it as number 2, right?
Yep.
Why isn't this? Like I added this actually a table in here because I wanted to introduce this icon, but for whatever reason, it introduced a space and it's not letting me delete it. Uh, nope, no luck. Okay. So we're down through 3 pages. We should probably present it to the TAC
Yep.
and basically say we've revised this because the other SIG is also going to be doing that. Um, but yeah. All right. So I will do that. I will message Dan and basically say, look, we're updating the charter. Um, if once they bless it, then I'll export to PDF and put it in GitHub. So we're done with this. And now I want to get into um, the interesting part. So again, under our governance patterns in our Google Drive folder, we have our draft pattern. So this is stuff under development, and this is the inference governance. And this is where I want to spend the rest of today's meeting. Okay, so oh, Roman wanted to join the other one. Okay, cool. All right, so the inferencing pattern, inferencing, inference governance. Okay, so you have the link. Feel free to open. And now we're getting into a few changes I made. So basically, it turns out that later in the text, I always use inputs and outputs together. So I call them data assets. And then also model architecture and model weights are used together. So instead of that, I just call them model assets or data assets and model assets.
Okay.
And you'll see, so I'll just accept this change. And they see like model inputs and outputs. And I say, this is where I got the data assets and I got model assets. So it just gives us me this little nice shortcut uh, for not having to specify 2 different things and worry that I forget. Okay, so data assets may be ephemeral and persistent. Um, and we should talk, there are some to-dos here. Should we, you know, uh, talk about the challenge, like the forces of the challenges, what makes solving the problem hard? So should we talk about the challenges presented by ephemeral access and challenges presented by persistent assets? Don't know yet, just leaving those comments in place. We'll circle back. So I added this paragraph that basically explaining that the model assets are going to be treated as constant, right? So we're basically saying, yeah, the model may change during like today's models, they fine-tune themselves based on the inputs. And
Yep.
I'm not denying it. I'm basically saying once we figure out the training part, which is a different pattern, I want to basically make a note for now saying, here we're treating the model as constant. And then later, after we figure out training, we will see how we can maybe, align the 2 documents or maybe refer to things saying, well, if your model is changing, well, you're subject to the training pattern and you should read that. We'll circle back. That's what I'm saying. This is a to-do, really.
I'm fine with that. I mean, ultimately,
Or I can put a to-do on this, basically saying we will need to circle back. We're not forgetting.
I'm fine either way, right? It's a simplification to focus on the use of
Yeah.
black box and what the implications of that are. And then the training needs will have its own kind of specific challenges.
Yeah. Okay. For the time being, this is where we are. Okay. So this has not changed. There is model owner, there is data owner, there is service provider, there's a summary of concerns. All I did here is I just introduced my shortcuts, model
Yep.
assets, data assets. So the model owner cares about model assets, data owner cares about data asset. Okay. And then the service provider wants to, be out of the business of either accessing model access or data assets. All right.
Hi, Rastika. Hi, Chris.
Okay. So again, so we're now in the problem section, and we're basically saying, all right, see, these are the concerns. The concerns are keeping the data confidential, keeping the model trustworthy, and the forces then refer. So, there are very little change here, but I just want to go through a few changes I suggested. So we're saying that the keys used to protect data at rest and in transit are assumed to be securely provisioned and kept inside the T,
Yep.
because I don't think we need to worry, like, we should not be covering key provisioning separately from every, if the, I- maybe the workload development pattern, the workload governance pattern, we should probably double check to see that it talks about the secure provisioning of keys.
There's I know NIST is working on a document on keys and key management at this point in time. It's a topic all on its own. Uh, just where do you store keys? How do you get keys? How do you use keys?
So I'm just, this is the to do for myself, just as like, I can make this assumption, but only if we talk about it elsewhere. Like we should talk about it. Okay. Privacy requirement we talked about, authenticity requirement. Again, here all I said is the model architecture.
Yep.
So that's the change. Um, all right. This is a comment from before. So this a lot of this content comes from this Anthropic paper, which I reference in the uh, in the references section, just because the paper was so good. But I felt they went a little ambitious, saying that the owner should be able to audit the flow of the private data within the model. Like I think this is something we need to talk about how realistic it is. But I I kept it, but this is again a to do for a later time. Maybe somebody with more expertise in this than I can speak to, you know, what is possible here.
I don't, I mean, once the data goes into the inference engine, I don't know what additional auditing capability you've got other than a attestation from the model builder that the data is not going anywhere else.
Hmm.
You don't have a way to actually track it. So, um,
Other than maybe review the model somehow or analyze it with some tools, which then that goes cross purposes with model confidentiality. Like if the model owner doesn't want you to know what the model is, you're
yep.
not going to be able to analyze it very well, now will you?
I mean, if the model is just weights in a neural net, you can validate the code that is implementing the neural net independent of the weights, and so you can then have a guarantee that you know what the code is going to do with your data. Um, but as soon as the data starts propagating through a network, you've
Yeah,
got no real ability to track it and make any sense of it.
yeah. Okay. So, all right. So let's leave it. And again, Steve, if you have good knowledge in this area, just suggest some text changes. There doesn't need to be real time now, but I'm hoping to finish this document in ideally by the end of March, by end of Q1, so we can move on to training. I don't spend forever on it, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be done right this second. All right. So the first one we talked about, we have to keep the data confidential. Here we're talking about keeping the model trustworthy. Should we talk about keeping the model confidential. See, we don't have, I'm going to add it to do. We should talk about that.
Yeah, because when you go back to what the goals are, that's what the model owner really
Oh,
wants.
by the way,
So,
we're talking trustworthy and confidential. So we already see there is an end-to-end model confidentiality requirement.
yep.
So I can say that already because it's covered. Okay. Um, that's done. Okay. Anthropic talks about SL4 plus models. This is for highly, highly secure environments. I'm not familiar with this whole SL, you know, gradations or scale. But Anthropic talks about it. We may want to bring some of that in here. I don't know. Again, leaving that as a to-do for now, because there is just a lot of other content that still needs to be inserted. That's high priority. And here we're talking about authenticity requirement. So the model as deployed matches the expectations, and also it covers authorized updates and rollbacks. And preventing unauthorized runs. Okay.
Yeah, I know SL4 comes out of NIST, but I don't know the specific details.
Yeah. So how to like I'm still unclear on how a model can be attested because like a model needs to be measured, and I kept saying for a while now that the model size, if it's like what could it be in the petabytes or you know terabytes?
You can't, I
In
mean,
which case, how do you even hash the thing? So. And how do you know that you're actually loading the model that you tested? Again, I'm not an expert in this, but as a as a sort of someone with a practical hat on, it sounds like a difficult problem to me.
I've never had to deploy a model across 100,000 servers, so I don't know what practicalities they've
Or
introduced in that.
how do you even like okay, just say you're deploying it on one server. If your model is I don't know 500 terabytes in size, how do you test it? How do you actually know that all the model that you're paging into your GPU, for instance, is actually the thing that you tested? Like, I would like to talk to somebody who knows this better than I
No,
do. So I don't know if you hear of
I'm
anyone,
not the right person.
right? But this is something that maybe I can bring to the attestation SIG actually, because we shouldn't be worrying about
Yeah,
attestation. Like, yeah, actually, let me make a note to myself. I'm in conversations with Greg Costel right now about the additional topics um, that we need to discuss.
yeah. I mean, when I was doing the fraud work, I used to do models were measured at the top end in megabytes, and there were two elements. There was the code that was going to do the inference, and then there was the data that went into that code.
Hmm.
That's two different things, and you could measure those independently.
Right.
We never did because we didn't have a need to.
Yeah. All right. So now we have a containment requirement. So again, this is uh, this is actually different than data containment. This is model containment. So when we talk about, let's talk about data containment requirement here. And this would be the model containment requirement, just to make it. There is also authenticity requirement. Um, yeah, I would much rather just make it clear that in one case we're talking about data, in the other case we're talking about model. They're not the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. Um, data confidentiality requirement and then model confidentiality requirement. Okay, so this is all good. Um, okay, fantastic. All right. So now we're getting into the forces section. So again, because we have two problem sections, so there is a problem section on keeping the data confidential, and then there is another one on keeping the model trustworthy and confidential. Right? So let's just get through them one by one. Now, again, the problem should not be the forces section. Simply, we said we have certain requirements, like we have a problem of keeping data confidential. Okay? The forces section should not be talking about a solution. It should be talking about what actually makes that hard. Because the solution is to the forces. I don't know, forces maybe not a good name for what makes something hard, but like what forces our hand to actually come up with a solution. I guess that's the best way to think about it. And uh, you know, so end-to-end confidentiality, it basically comes down to properly managing the workloads. And for that, we have the governance pattern for workloads, workload upgrades, and the keys. And
And,
now,
and we just described one of the challenges on the data is how do you audit the data once it goes into a model?
that would be under containment. This is just confidentiality, right? So we talk about data authenticity, data containment, and the containment will, again, we'll need to come back to that because let's just make sure the lower hanging fruit are handled. Um, I did have a comment on this from you, Steve. The same as reverse proxy governance. I feel quite strongly that we should make a specifically lawful intercept, so a governance opinion keys, whatever, explicitly just out of scope. And like I personally care that no entity can go to my CSP and request my data. And in fact, if they want to know what I'm up to, they should serve a warrant on me. That's how I personally feel. I believe putting that kind of language in this document would cause a lot of unnecessary distraction.
I think that's fair.
Because
Um,
we like confidential computing may need to operate in jurisdictions where by law there are backdoors, but we should not wade into these waters. So that's why I basically said um, we, in the reverse proxy governance pattern, just to show you uh, something I'm working on independently right now because we only have so much time in this SIG and on these meetings once a week. But you will see that there is a there is some language. There we go. The reverse proxies are deployed with the full knowledge and consent of all participants and not require warrants or clandestine deployment. In that way, they differ materially from lawful intercept, which is outside the scope of this document. Right. So,
yep, we
but
can use
reverse
something
proxies,
similar.
they literally they are by design, they break TLS, they by design
Right.
inspect traffic, right? So it's very salient there. But since you brought lawful intercept into the other one, I feel we should make a disclaimer similar to this one.
You can make the same disclaimer.
Okay. Um, okay, so I'll just say that here, disclaimer just on top. Lawful intercept of confidential communications and confidential data processing is explicitly outside the scope of this document. So that's it. Just not doing it. Okay. All right. So, and then maybe it goes into the problem section. Maybe I'll move it around. But now that we said it, um, you know, we can remove this
Yep.
particular question, and we can
And the next to do, you eliminated as well up above. What can the model learn from the data provided?
what do you mean I eliminated it?
You made the assumption that the model is fixed and not learning.
Yes. Well, that's already captured by the to-do up there.
Yep, that's why I said you can delete
Yeah,
it
yeah,
here.
yeah. Okay. Um,
Yeah, and then the next one is, do we need any controls on uh, what the model owner is allowed to do? So we've got a clean room product that we sell, and part of the policy dictates whether the model can exfiltrate the data out or not.
all right. I'm trying to figure out how to slot this into either problem definition or forces definition or the solution, right? So I'm kind of inclined to already jump in and say, well, we may have this inference model, and the inference model may be receiving inputs from multiple parties and sending outputs to multiple parties. So, for instance, if you have an inference model that's doing like money laundering inferencing, right? Which means multiple entities like financial institutions, whatnot, may combine their data sets so they can see are we dealing with the money laundering operation? But this means that the model effectively takes inputs uh, from multiple entities, and the responses are likewise going to entities that do not necessarily want to see each other's inputs and outputs. And this means that a model like this, when inferencing, may maintain multiple keys for all of its participants. I don't
Yeah,
know
so,
if
so
this is something that needs to be covered here.
where we see challenges come up in our clean room is somebody's got data shows up to a model and there's some pre-work that goes on. So I'm going to take some of the data and I'm going to query another data source and then feed that information into the model as well. So now I've got data that came in that's being exfiltrated from the TEE because it's being queried into a database to get additional enrichment content, right? So in the AML use case, maybe I'm looking up zip codes. Maybe I'm calling a routine that's going to normalize addresses,
Right.
right? So is that right? That's an opportunity to break the confidentiality because data is going to exfiltrate to go into that query for a secondary data source.
Yeah. So, okay, how do one state that?
Well,
Like,
we're just in the forces. So, what are the things that make this hard? So, one of the things that makes it hard is that the models may reference other data. The models may use data to reference other tools. And how do you maintain control of the confidentiality when that happens?
okay.
Right. This is why people tokenize data and enable you to run queries across tokenized data.
Okay. So
Straight up inference.
I'm just trying to figure out how to change this paragraph. So first we start saying achieving data confidentiality requires properly managing the workload. So this is almost like a separate bullet. And I'm just trying to like basically structure it. So here we're saying any actions confidential data management security. Okay. So this is about workload management and key management.
Yep. So the other thing is then what can the workload do?
So this is a force. Like workload and key management is something that you need to figure out how to do properly. We can talk about that. The second one is you're basically saying, you said who's on the for releasing the keys. I'll just leave it in there.
Yep.
Okay. What can the model owner do with the data once provided? Okay. So, um,
So this is a different bullet. And this is can they, so if the model is self-contained, right, our solution is simple. It stays within the TE and life is good. What happens if the model wants to reach out to its own tools?
and keeping the data given to it. is fairly straightforward and follows the same mechanisms as traditional confidential workloads. However, if modern models often use
Tools,
external tools or
external tools to gather additional information.
execute maybe agentic tasks.
Yep.
In those cases, um, this is this really this is more of a containment thing. It is end-to-end data confidentiality, but it's also containment.
You can put it in either category then.
Well, I mean, maybe we should combine data confidentiality with containment.
I want to say data confidentiality and containment and just roll them together.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how this would reflect on the this is about auditing. Maybe this is really about data usage auditing.
I mean,
And then we can basically put this end-to-end data confidentiality and containment.
yeah, I mean, we say right up at the top, the data owner wants to protect data assets from disclosure and tampering. So we're expressly writing some content. What happens when the model wants to disclose the data for its own purposes? What are the requirements there? Does it need to only call other sources that are in TEEs that respect the auditing and the capabilities described herein? Or is there some other means we use for assuring the containment and confidentiality of that data?
Right. So again, I'm trying to yeah, I'm really thinking I really think we should put the confidentiality and containment on one, and then the last bullet becomes about auditing, the usage auditing. As during external tool agent invocation. I think that's enough for the problem space. And then this becomes the data usage auditing
Okay.
or data flow auditing. I think this actually cleans it up. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is data
Now
audit.
what we're interested is what services did the model call and make sure all of those are audited and logged, auditable and logged.
Where would you put that?
That's up in my to do for what was the containment paragraph up a bit. Um,
So I can take this
what's
and
now
put
data flow
that
and auditing goes in there.
under here, right?
Yep.
Cases, data must remain confidential while preserving the ability to invoke these outside tools and the agents. Is that good enough for now?
Yeah, reading it. Yep.
Yeah. Again, we're not talking about solutions. We're just saying, hey, pay attention.
What the pain is. Correct.
Yeah, this is gonna hurt. Okay. Um, what can the MO do with the data owner data once provided? That's sort of in here.
That's the bullet we just covered. Yep.
Is there more to it though? Like logging.
I added a second one, which is the same problem but from the different angle, right? So um, uh, I think what the problem is how does the data owner prevent exfiltration of their data? The control part of it is what are the controls? What is the model owner allowed to do once the data owner provides data?
Yeah. And when you say model owner, this falls under the model containment.
Yep. So the last bullet is clearly model containment, and the first two bullets are data containment.
Okay. So we're gonna put this under. We have C1 even talked about the model.
Yep.
Put that under model containment. Okay, cool. So we have 20 minutes left, so I think we can still make quite a bit of progress. So we talk about great exfiltration of data. So we
Yeah.
already kind of talked about data. Like this is preventing data exfiltration, right? Or is there more to it? Because there's also logs. There is also
Those are solutions.
uh no, as in uh, making sure that your data doesn't end up in some log that someone then can read.
Ah, yes.
All right. So we talked about like if we're going to be talking about data, so this is just workload and key management.
Yep.
Um, so there is a data exfiltration.
Yep.
Now, data tampering, I mean, we're presuming you're talking to the thing over TLS, or should we? Or it's kind of a gimme.
You made that statement up above. I believe that we made the comment that the keys are there.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't think there's any external requirement to have data integrity guarantees added into the mix.
yeah,
Um, other than the fact that you've set up a secure communication with the environment.
right. So that's kind of, I mean, I could say as well as there are keys to protect data in transit and at rest.
Yep.
Okay. So data exfiltration. So here we, if the model is self-contained, giving data given to it is fairly straightforward. One of the external tools. In addition, um, care must be taken to ensure that data belonging to the DO does not end up in logs or something like that.
Yep.
So we got workload key management, we got data exfiltration. What else here? So we talk about, so we handle this, right? So I can delete that.
Those are there. I don't think there is anything else.
So you
Right.
think that's it, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, if we come up with anything else, we're talking about data
Because we've
confidentiality.
essentially said you've got to establish trust in the workload. Once you've established trust in the workload, if your status stays in the box, life is good.
Yeah.
Anything that leaves the box
Yeah.
has to be approved by the data owner effectively. There have to be controls in place because that's where all the leakage is going to come from. Calls to other systems, logs, output messages. Presumably, the whole reason the model is executing is it wants to produce a result. What is the result, and is there any sensitive data in the result?
Yeah. Okay. All
If the
right.
model
No,
doesn't produce a result, it's useless, right? You can save a whole lot of power and just not run it.
there's data privacy. There's data authenticity, data flow auditing. All right. So privacy is the one that like it's kind of orthogonal. It's like private. It's not entirely, orthogonal, but it's largely orthogonal. Because yes, we're definitely keeping your data confidential if we do everything right. Um, but that's not all of privacy. That's just, one fairly small aspect of it. Because maybe you can infer something. Maybe in fact there was this right to forget. Like I do not know how much of it we can say here, but what makes privacy hard? Probably no shortage of those.
Something like right to forget is if you've got a non-mutating model,
Yeah,
then it's not going to remember anything about the data. You present some data, it presents a result, and then everything is gone at that point. So in the definition you've provided to date, I don't think there is a cover write forget. That's going to be in a larger application context.
yeah. Well, so maybe a right to forget needs to go into the confidential training.
That definitely has to go into confidential training,
Okay, so let me do that.
right?
We have the confidential training document.
For years, right to forget was kind of skirted in training because once you've generated a set of weights in a neural net, you can't really pull out the things that were learned,
Hmm.
even though they were learned. But any sort of
Yes.
generative AI use case, like an LLM, you ask it for a social security number and it outputs a social security number. Where did that social security number come from? It
Yeah.
outputs text, and it happens to be the text of Harry Potter. Clearly, it's been trained on Harry Potter, and right to forget becomes important. But this is above and beyond, I think, what we're covering in confidential computing.
Yeah.
An application level issue.
So here's an interesting one under data or privacy. So there is identifying which regulations apply. This okay, so that's true. You need to know which regulations apply. But here's one. Uh, can a running model uh, attest to which privacy regulations it is currently meeting and inform a potential DO of its promises? Like that would be nice. Like if I connected to a model and I basically said, "Hey, you GDPR," and I could get an attestation out of it, or maybe it's part of the model identity that basically tells me, "Here is." Oh, Chris, you just came off. Maybe it's something you want to talk to.
You're on mute, Chris.
Hold on, sorry here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I have an unstable internet connection this morning. Um, I was going to say, just to make a comment about privacy, is that one way I've seen people think about it is that the distinction between privacy and confidentiality is that, one is simply blanket protecting your information from any disclosure, whereas the other is controlling who gets to see it and when. And in that kind of definition, right to forget is just one facet of privacy. So that might be one way of thinking about it. But actually, I have a broader comment about this conversation, which I'm just sort of catching up on. Is um, I'm wondering um, if it's worthwhile to preface this document with a statement about how, if at all, AI inference is different from any other confidential computing workload, and then focusing on what distinguishes AI inference from other kinds of workloads, rather than sort of starting. I mean, I have sort of a general feeling that we're starting from a very ground zero kind of place here, and then building out this concept um, of uh, of confidential inference from scratch, rather than saying, okay, here's the baseline protections provided by confidential computing. Now, here is the additional stuff that you might want to think about.
Okay. Um, so I, I let me just be a nitpicker for just 1 second. Confidentiality is also about selective disclosure, right? You got to have this key in order to be able to read this piece of data, right? But it's more, the difference is it's kind of code level confidentiality. It's not an application level confidentiality. Like application may decide, yes, I'll encrypt it, whatever data I'm sending you, but I will choose what of it you actually get to see. And this is beyond encryption. This is like, yeah, application level filtering, I guess. I'm just trying to
Yeah, like
understand.
in a human, yeah, this definition I've seen sort of originating from people who think about sort of the human intuition about what is privacy. And a good example is that a teenager, or like you as an individual, want your insurance provider to see different information than your doctor to see different information than people that you work with.
Yeah.
That kind of control is what people think of as privacy, and it's as much about projecting your image on the world as it is keeping your data confidential. It's not that you necessarily want to keep everything confidential to yourself. You want to selectively disclose it. And that's sort of a working concept of privacy that I've seen used
Yeah.
very effectively to distinguish from, the security concept of confidentiality.
Okay. Do you have any wording you'd like to suggest here, or
Um, well, I guess the main thing is I would just put
what so the forces, what makes it difficult? So yeah, we want to worry about privacy, but we can basically say what you just said. So maybe privacy is a um, constraint on top of data confidentiality, and that it involves not merely bulk protection of data against
secrets protection, maybe.
unauthorized access using encryption, but rather filtering out the data based on some privacy requirements before it can be shared. Like maybe something like that.
Uh, yeah. Let me. Um, it, yeah. It's more about access controls, the user's access control requirements, as opposed to just the encryption and secrets protection.
Well, so for encryption, it's the access control is key based, right? If you have this key, you're gonna get the data encrypted
You
with the
have it or
key.
you don't. It's kind of binary.
Right.
So
Um,
it's beyond binary secrets protection.
yeah.
anyway, that was more a philosophical point. I guess as I look at this, the more important is
Uh,
confidential inference actually different
Access
from
control is
uh,
applied to cryptographic keys, but while filtering the database and privacy regarding where access control is or controls are applied to the data itself. How's this?
I like it.
Yeah?
Big internet again.
Or maybe
Yeah,
we
can you
can
hear me?
say is a tighter constraint than
We just lost Chris, but I'm sure he'll be back.
yeah, but what do you think
Um,
of this
but
paragraph, Steve?
I like that paragraph, especially as a disclaimer that confidential computing may help a application meet the requirements of privacy on top of confidentiality. Right to forget. It's kind of like asking what is the privacy implication of
Yeah,
TLS on right to forget. Um, there isn't an obvious one, but there's an
yeah.
obvious
By
play in
itself,
TLS for confidentiality, and you can
yeah,
make the same claims for TEEs. Um,
cannot provide assurances of the proper implementation of privacy um, controls. We can actually about the proper implementation of
yeah, we've had conversations where one of the unique things about confidential computing is it enables you to reduce the scope of things you have to reason over, and you can make claims that are provable in some context. What is the workload? And so you could put metadata with the statement, what is the workload? And so something providing data could ask the metadata before it even passes data to the workload. What claims do you make? Are you PII certified? Are
yeah,
you
this is by the
ICANN
way where I'm basically
certified?
saying it's this one. Can a
Right.
running model attest to which privacy regulations it is currently meeting and inform potential DO of its promises?
And so it can attest to that, but somebody would have to create a framework for describing that metadata and some way to then query that before you pass
Yeah,
data
and
into
we
that. So
can
that's
take that, well, again, I can take that to the attestation SIG. If you've noticed, attestation SIG recently has been worried about relay attacks on TLS, and it's been going on for months, which is not actually solving the business problems. So we need to maybe talk to them about, it cannot be all about, TLS replay and relay attacks.
Yeah.
Like,
And so I feel like it needs to be a system that provides this next level up step of guarantees. Now, that whether that gets standardized as something the industry adopts would be the next level, but it's not intrinsic in the technology itself. It's just a use case that the technology enables.
yeah. All right. With 2 minutes left, I think we have enough here. So uh, I want to take like this last part of the discussion to the attestation SIG.
Okay.
Already, so we identified that we need to be able to test large models and figure out how does that even done. And the second thing we'll talk about is can can the attestation SIG take up the mantle of figuring out how can an attestation of a workload tell effectively the relying party of this workload, somebody who wants to interact with that workload, what privacy regulations that thing has. And maybe it's a simple statement, we'll put that in the URI of the workload, basically. We'll already say, well, this is your payroll app. Payroll app is deployed in Germany. Payroll app satisfies the GDPR requirements. And then the relying party can look at it and say, all right, well, I mean, then I can share with you data on German citizens. Otherwise, if you're in France and do GDPR, that's not good enough. And if you're in Germany but you're not GDPR, then it's also not good enough. Maybe we can start talking about situations like that. But again, this is for the attestation SIG to figure out. We'll need to consume their output. We can make some recommendations. So with that, I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Thank you so
Good.
much.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.